morning from Vallelunga, everyone. We are here for stage 1 of the third round of TCR European Endurance, together with Mauricio Slaviero, series promoter. Mauricio, first of all, how is it to be back here racing after the summer break?
It's wonderful. It's always wonderful to be back racing, especially in a very nice circuit like we have here in Vallelunga. Wonderful day. So I'm sure that we are going to have a great race and a great fights.
17 drivers here on the grid. What does it mean for the championship?
Oh, that's very important. You know, our series is growing a lot. The number of drivers that are interested is growing. So we are really happy with the 17 drivers. We have a very high level of drivers here. We have Salvatore Tavano, we have Eric Brigliadori, we have now Bebo Girolami that has just won a race in the World Tour, so the level is really high. You know, Yuri Brigliadori is also another one that is doing a great job, so it's going to be a great race and a lot of fights.
Thank you so much, Mauricio. It's time to go racing, so back to you.
So much fighting, and of course at just 9 minutes left on the clock. And then in Slovakia they had an issue during stage number 1. This is the perfect time to remember the format of the championship. We're going to have 2 stages both today. This one is stage number 1, which will then set the starting grid for stage number 2, which is starting at 2:15 p.m. local time later today. At the end of stage number 2, the results will be added. So the added times between stages 1 and 2 will give us the final classifications, with teams and drivers obtaining points for both stages, as well as the final classifications at the end of stage number 2. The grid is set. The teams have left the starting grid. We only have the cars and the drivers now out on track, and we're ready to start the formation lap, as now the Cupra of Eric Scalvini leaves the grid. We're ready to witness the formation lap and speak about this incredible circuit here in Vallelunga. 4,085 meters long, with 15 corners, 7 to the left, 8 to the right. Track that broke ground in 1951 when it was a sand-based circuit, with asphalt being put in 1957. Track that has been a historic one here in Italy. It's one of the big 5, of course, together with Monza, Imola, Misano, and Mugello. It's the one furthest to the south of these 5, and it had some big renovation projects in 2005 when the complex of turns that we're coming towards was added. So turns number 6, 7, and 8. Here we are in turns number 4 and 5, Cimini 1 and Cimini 2. And after this double right-hander, usually drivers would go on straight, and instead now we're turning slightly to the left, come to this very important corner, Campagnano, which is a long 180 degree hairpin, turn number 7. It's a very complicated racetrack, one that, however, suits TCR race cars perfectly. We have seen plenty of important championships here. Of course, in the last few years, we've seen WTCR here in 2022, as well as TCR World Tour in both 2023 and 2024, when Vallelunga was the season opener of the championship. And let's not forget that, of course, later this November, the TCR World Ranking Final will be hosted here with a very similar format to the one the TCR European Endurance is using today. We're now getting ready to start the final part of the formation lap, entering sector number 3 with Eric Scalvini on pole position. Behind him, it's BRC Racing Team, of course, a team that needs no introduction. They have just been spectacular in the World Tour, with Nestor Girolami winning just a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, he is here to make his debut in TCR European Endurance together with Macedonian driver Viktor Davidovski, who will take the wheel in the second half of the race. We then have Davide Rosini, Berkal Paklioglu on the second row, with Senna Summerbell, the winner of the overall standings, despite him being in a DSG car in Slovakia. He's starting from 5th, ahead of Edoardo Maccari. But then Yuri Brigliadori, the championship leader, starting down in 7th position. And Sinan Shifchi rounding out the top 8. As the cars are now coming towards the final turn, Curva Roma. And as the lights will turn from red to green, we will be able to go racing here for round 3 of TCR European Endurance. Watch the lights on the left-hand side. Green, green, green. We're racing here in Vallelunga for round 3 of the season. It's a great getaway for Nestor Girolami, who's already alongside Eric Scalvini, trying to make a move into turn number 2. And he looks to have taken the lead, and that is the case, as Hyundai take the lead with the Elantra for the first time ever, as now Scalvini has to defend from, it looks like, Berkal Paklioglu in the Audi. No, it's actually BF Motorsport. What a start from Yuri Brigliadori. He was down in 7th, and he is already up into 3rd. Incredible getaway for the Italian, as Calpaglioglu is actually in 4th position, but Brigliadori is already up to 3rd. In fact, negating the driveshaft issues that the team had earlier this weekend in qualifying, and he's already up into 3rd. So that is an incredible job from the championship leader, showing his prowess with this car. And behind him are the two Tudor Motorsport cars, who are currently leading things off in the DSG standings. Meanwhile, Senna Summerbell is fighting with Berkal Paklioglu in the other DSG car, the one that started from pole position of its class. But now they're down into 7th place. But meanwhile, it's Nestor Girolami in front, with Eric Scalvini in 2nd, and a phenomenal Yuri Brigliadori already up into 3rd position. That is phenomenal from the Italian. He had started from pole on both occasions this year, in both Mugello and the Slovakia ring. And then, of course, this weekend, having the drive shaft issues in qualifying, he had to start from 7th position, though he is now already up into 3rd at the end of the opening lap of first stage TCR European Endurance here. Meanwhile, we have, that is Berkal Paklioglu in the Texaco Team AMS DSG entry. He was pole sitter of the DSG class, but he looks to have gone off into the grass at turn 14, that looked like the very last chicane of the racetrack, not including, of course, Curva Roma, the final turn of the circuit. Meanwhile, we're already into lap number 2, and we can see also the graphics telling us that we have 52 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock for stage number 1. And here is our stage leader, Nestor Girolami, who's looking very quick, not just in these first couple of laps, but of course in the entire race weekend. He set the lap record of the circuit, of course, though different conditions compared to what we usually have in other championships and different tires, with Girolami breaking the wall of the 1 minute 40s in qualifying. Now a slight lockup for the BRC Racing Team driver, who was already, however, 2 seconds clear of Eric Scalvini in second position. Scalvini, of course, will have one of the fastest and most decorated drivers partnering him in the second half of the stage, and that is multiple TCR Italy champion Salvatore Tavano, as he will take place inside car number 6. Cupra was the very first non-Audi entry to take pole position in the history of the championship earlier this weekend, showing the prowess of this car on such a narrow circuit. But of course, you can see 3 different cars belonging to the Gen 2 class. So the cars with sequential gearbox with, of course, the most recent specifications. We have 3 different cars in the top 3 with the Honda Elantra, the Cupra Leon, and of course the Audi RS3, the major model that has written the story of this championship so far, with Yuri Brigliadori being the championship leader, and of course his brother Eric winning the title last year together with Turgut Konukoglu with Texaco Team AMS. And speaking of the Turkish outfit, they're now sitting in the lead of the Gen 1 standings as well, with Sinan Çiftçi, and then of course Berk Kapaklioglu, who was starting from the DSG pole, but unfortunately had a spin into turn 14, as we saw briefly before. Here is the Texaco Team AMS car just ahead of Senna Summerbell. Meanwhile, here we're back with Eric Scalvini, looking to bridge the gap between himself and Nestor Girolami, though it only looks to be growing and growing at 2.9 seconds now. Last lap was a 141.2 for Girolami, 142.1 for Scalvini, losing 9/10 of a second, but crucially gaining 5/10 over Yuri Brigliadori, meaning that so far Girolami is by far the quickest driver, but Scalvini is definitely gaining on Brigliadori, and this is the most crucial part of the stage for BF Motorsport, as Brigliadori is the quickest driver of the pair. At least that's what we've seen so far this season, and of course during this weekend, with Alessandro Acidi making a comeback in TCR European Endurance after missing the Slovakia ring. Meanwhile, we've seen, I think it was one of the Tudor Motorsport cars entering the pit lane. I think it was the Volkswagen Golf DSG of Davide Rosini, who looks to be into the pit lane now, which is a real shame for him because he was looking mighty quick in the first few minutes of the stage, and most crucially of the entire weekend, though unfortunately his race seemed to have taken a turn for the worse here in Vallelunga as early as the opening stages of stage number 1. Here is the top 3 with Yuri Brigliadori trying to chase down Eric Scalvini for second position. Brigliadori able to finish in second place in both races, though failing to take that elusive victory in either stages or in the actual classifications. He was so close to do it in Mugello when he was fighting with Sandro Pelati and PMA Motorsport, all the way down to the final lap of stage number 2. We've had the most exciting race gap-wise between P1 and P2. That was the shortest gap for victory in the history of the championship, promoted by Mauricio Slaviero, as we now start lap number 4. A 1:41 flat for Nestor Girolami, who has just set the fastest lap of the race, gaining almost a second on Eric Scalvini and 1.3 seconds on Yuri Brigliadori. That is definitely the pace that Girolami was looking for, as of course he needs to gain as much as possible because he knows how quick Salvatore Tavano can be in the latter half of this opening stage. Tavano was in fact the driver who was able to take pole position for Vimmerwerk Motorsport earlier this weekend with a phenomenal Q2 lap. It was almost 1.5 seconds quicker than VRC Racing Team with Viktor Davidovski. And that was exactly why the Cupra was able to start from pole position for the first time ever, though of course it wasn't the very first time that they had started in first position in any of the stages, as they had led in Mugello after stage number 1, therefore taking the lead into stage number 2 and starting from first position. Let's not forget, in fact, that the finishing order of stage number 1, not only does it give points for the championship, with 16 points given to the pair that finishes in P1, and then, of course, 14 points to the one that finishes in P2, and then so on until the very end of the top 8. Meanwhile, here we are with Yuri Brigliadori looking to bridge the gap to Eric Scalvini. Scalvini so far being the second quickest driver, though just for a tenth and a half of a second over Yuri Brigliadori in the previous lap. On the other hand, Girolami has broken the barrier of the 1 minute 41s, dropping into the 140s, 140.9 to be exact, in the previous lap. That is the fastest lap of the race. And he is definitely building a nice gap over Eric Scalvini. He's doing exactly what his brother Franco Girolami was doing in the first race back in Mugello. He was racing with PMA Motorsport together with Sandro Pelatti. They were the winners back in race number 1. And now we've seen a lockup from Sinan Shifci, who looks to have overtaken Edoardo Maccari, and that is the case. They are, of course, part of two different categories. On one hand, we have the Gen 1 car of the Texaco Team AMS entry. That is the Turkish outfit with Sinan Shifci. And then behind them is Edoardo Maccari in the DSG standings with the Audi RS3 DSG for Tudor Motorsport. Maccari so far is leading things in the DSG category, just in front of Senna Summerbell, with the Jamaican driver able to take an astonishing overall victory in Slovakia at the Slovakia Ring. With Maccari now down into 5th position, but still, of course, able to keep a hold of his DSG lead. Now we can see the gap between Scalvini and Brigliadori still being around 3 seconds. Brigliadori is trying very hard to close the gap down. Of course, after the opening stint of the stage, we'll see Salvatore Tavano and Alessandro Alcidi take place aboard the Cupra and the Audi respectively in 2nd and 3rd position, which is going to give a slight advantage to Wimmerwerk Motorsport, the German outfit, who is currently leading the team's championship as well, with 2 very strong entries with Senna Summerbell and Wimmerwerk Motorsport. And this weekend, Summerbell is sharing the car with Chris Issa, the Jamaican motorsport legend that is coming back to racing after many years. He was able to partake in qualifying for the very first time yesterday, thus taking home his first points of the season. And here we see Senna driving around in his Cupra DSG, who's the championship leader in the DSG standings, now into 2nd position in stage number 1 behind Edoardo Maccari, who's doing a phenomenal job so far. He's been one of the most consistent drivers this season, especially for Tudor Motorsport, both car number 8 which suffered a tech issue yesterday in qualifying, though they were able to set a competitive lap time in the second session, thus starting from 6th position. They're up into 5th, but crucially, up into the DSG lead after the first 13 race so far, with Nestor Girolami still in front. Meanwhile, here is the fight for the DSG standings with Eduardo Macari, who is still, of course, pushing as hard as he can. He will then be giving the Audi to Emilio Damante. Of course, the DSG standings are very much important for the championship. It is one of the closest championship fights so far, though, of course, the one in the overall standings is too, with, crucially, Senna Summerbell being inside that fight after his spectacular overall victory in Slovakia that proved just how quick both the Cupra can be and, of course, how quick he is able to go with this car. Definitely a surprise in the 2025 TCR European Endurance season, which has done tremendous things in the first 2 rounds in Mugello and at the Slovakia ring. It's doing the same here in Vallelunga. And then, of course, let's not forget that the final round of the season will be hosted in Misano Adriatico from the 13th to the 15th of November with a spectacular night race. Close things off in 2025. Meanwhile, here is car number 1 of Sinan Shifci. He is leading the Gen 1 standings. And speaking of leaders, here is Nestor Girolami in the BRC racing team Hyundai. That is the first time that the Elantra is racing in this championship. We've had Hyundai in the past with the i30N, smallest and older car from Hyundai. And then, of course, the Elantra making its debut here in Vallelunga with great pace and, of course, passing the test with flying colors, taking the fastest overall time in qualifying, though having to settle for second place after the sum of the times from both sessions was done. Still guaranteeing itself a front row start on its debut, therefore pushing Audi out of the top 2 spots for the very first time in the history of the championship. But you can see that the driver is making a hell of a difference. Of course, Nestor Girolami needs no introduction. He is actually the 9th highest ranked driver in the TCR World Ranking. He is and has been a frequent flyer in TCR World Tour, of course, the World Championship being his maiden campaign in the last couple of seasons, having demonstrated all his pace. He is a runner-up of the World Championship when it was the WTCR back in 2022. And this year, he is the latest winner in Australia. That was round 5 of the season. He is currently fighting for a spot in the top 5 of the World Championship. And then, of course, here, so far, demonstrating how good he can be with this car. And inside the first 17 minutes, he has been absolutely fantastic. Still lapping second a lap faster than the rest of the field. The 141.5 was the final lap from Girolami, at least inside the first 17 minutes. A 42.5 for Scalvini and a 42.4 for Yuri Briadori, who is starting to nick a couple of tenths of Scalvini each lap. Now the gap is 3.2 seconds. So Briadori, of course, will have to start gaining a bit. So slight bit of gravel on the racing line too. Naturally, this is one of the old school racetracks where gravel traps are present around its turns. We've seen them on the outside of Campagnano too, and that was turn number 7. Now going to Sorate, turn number 8. As we move closer to the pit window, when drivers will have to stop for their mandatory pit, changing drivers. We will be seeing Nestor Girolami give the car to Viktor Davidovski. Eric Scalvini is instead handing it over to Salvatore Tavano. And then, of course, Yuri Vigliadori is partnering up with Alessandro Alcidi this weekend, just like he did in Mugello. Whereas in Slovakia, it was Giuseppe Cartia who helped Yuri finish into second. Meanwhile, there's a bit of bodywork flopping from the Audi of Tudor Motorsport of Edoardo Maccari in 5th position. He had also went slightly wide into the grass at the exit of turn number 7. Whereas here we are with car number 1. That is the Gen 1 leaders of Sinan Çiftçi. And to be fair to car number 1, they have been phenomenally quick this weekend. Çiftçi and Ibrahim Okiai have flirted with 3rd place in the overall standings throughout the entire weekend here in Vallelunga. Of course, they are looking for their first seasonal overall podium. You know, we can also see the car parked into the pit lane. That is Davide Rosini. Still unable, unfortunately, to get back underway. Of course, we will see whether or not Tudor Motorsport can be back with both cars for stage number 2, which will be starting later today at 2:15 local time. And with the changes to the point system this year, it's crucial that teams try to at least finish one of the stages, since both stages give individual points, as well as, of course, the full point system for the combined results following both stages. We're still with Sinan Çiftçi in the Texaco Team AMS entry, which had its fair share of problems this weekend with an engine issue in free practice, though they were already up and running in FP2. The amazing job by the Turkish team. Of course, they are the reigning champions in all categories as well as the team standings after their incredible 2024 campaign, winning the overall DSG and the Gen 1 Drivers' Championships, as well as, of course, the team standings, as I've said before. This year, they're dominating the Gen 1 class with this exact car. And then Çiftçi, together with Ibrahim Okiai, they have won both races so far this season. And they're also contesting in the DSG category with Berk Karpakloglu, one of the youngest drivers this season. He has partnered up with different drivers throughout 2025. The latter one was Umut Göktaş, who we will be seeing for the very first time today in the second half of the stage. Meanwhile, the fight for the DSG lead seems to be ready to begin, as Edoardo Maccari sees Senna Summerbell gain 10th after 10th. It was 8 tenths in the previous lap, a 1:45.1 for Summerbell, a 45.9 for Maccari. But speaking of Senna Summerbell, he is, of course, the DSG leader. But speaking of DSG, here we are with Davide Rosini in car number 38. Well, out of car number 38, unfortunately, as we've seen the team pull into the pit lane at the very start of this stage. And then, of course, now, unfortunately, unable to continue. So far, the fight for the DSG lead is still waiting to begin. As we see now, Edoardo Maccari doing his best to try and keep not just 5th position in the overall standings, but most crucially the DSG lead. And then, of course, it will be time for Emilio Davanti and Chris Issa to drive the car. Bell, of course, being one of the quickest drivers of the entire field, not just the DSG standings. And then in the second half of this stage, his teammate Chris Issa will make his official debut in a race this season after having helped in free practice in the first 2 rounds, and then, of course, taking part of qualifying earlier this weekend. You can see how they're trying to follow each other through. At least that is what Somerville is looking to do. With Edoardo Macari still in front. And meanwhile, here we are in a pit lane, and that is to the Motorsport getting ready to either pit car number 8 or restart car number 38, though the latter one seems to be a bit difficult to do now. With Emilio Davanti getting ready to take place aboard car number 8. And that is the Audi DSG, now being chased by Senna Somerville, whose relentless pressure is not getting to the head of Macari so far. Now going into the very last part of the circuit, into turn number 12. Tire, then we see now the chicane. That brings the drivers towards turn 15, and that is Curva Roma, through to yet another lap. Let's see if Somerville can actually mount a challenge over Edoardo Macari right this second, as he takes the slipstream. Meanwhile, we see Salvatore Tavano getting ready with Vimmerwerk Motorsport, and behind him, Senna Somerville's teammate Chris Issa is also getting ready to take place in the Cobra that we're seeing right now, trying to catch the Audi of Edoardo Macari. And as we've seen before, the slight part of bodywork damage flopping away on the Audi that is definitely hurting the performance of car number 8, at least aerodynamically wise. Though Macari was able to defend correctly into turn 7. Campagnano. That was not an easy task for him, as we've seen how good Senna Somerville can be, especially into his defensive moves. Meanwhile, here is Eric Scalvini in the pit lane, and that is the first pit stop for stage number 1. Scalvini now leaving the track and giving the car to Salvatore Tavano, and that was to be expected, of course, trying to put who is arguably the fastest driver of the pair in as early as possible. Contrary will probably happen for Nessa Girolami, who's staying aboard car number 10 for as long as possible. We also see Chris Issa looking at the pit stop. He's getting ready himself to jump on board the Cupra, this time the DSG entry of Vimmerwerk Motorsport, German outfit, bringing in 2 cars right from the beginning. Let's see now if Somerville can muster up a move on the inside of Edoardo Macari. That does not look like it, at least so far. It's going to probably be on Chris Issa's shoulders to fight with Emilio Davanti. Meanwhile, Salvatore Davano has left his pit box. He's getting ready to disengage the pit limiter and start racing once again. He was the first one to pit and probably will be for quite some time, as Mr. Girolami and Yuri Brigliadori are definitely staying out a little bit longer. The next car to pull in is car number 2 with Berk Karpaklioglu, as Umut Göktaş will take his place, making his TCR European Endurance official debut this weekend, as Edoardo Macari also pulls into the pit lane, therefore releasing Senna Somerville for at least a couple of laps. We're seeing with our camera, the dedicated one into the pit lane now goes Edoardo Macari, as Emilio Damante gets ready to help him out of the truck of the car, getting maybe some tips and tricks on how to drive this Audi RS3 DSG this time out early in the morning. This was the same conditions that the drivers had in qualifying yesterday. Team also checking the bodywork damage to the front right part of the car, though nothing to be really concerned about. But meanwhile, we've saw briefly to the right and now to the left of the screen Nestor Girolami pull into the pit lane. Meanwhile, Yuri Brigliadori continues on. So stage 1 done for Nestor Girolami, as he is already out of the car and has helped Viktor Davidovski get strapped in. The North Macedonian driver, being very competitive in his career. He has plenty of experience throughout the last couple of years between TCR World Tour and TCR Europe, where he was also a race winner. We see now the back of the Honda Elantra of BRC Racing Team. An outfit that is challenging for victory on the first ever outing in the series. Well, we see now Yuri Brigliadori looking to extend his opening stint. Of course, this is a strategy that we've already seen throughout this year, as Brigliadori is definitely looking to be one of the fastest cars out there so far. But now he does elect to pull into the pit lane to make his mandatory stop at the very end of the pit window, and now he is getting ready to stop into his pit box. There he is, with Alessandro Acidi sprinting to the left-hand side of the car, getting ready therefore to take his place and once again be at the start of a TCR European Endurance event after missing out in Slovakia, but competing in Mugello and being part of the team that finished in second position in the overall standings. Meanwhile, here it is Nestor Bebu Girolami after his stint on the pit wall for BRC Racing Team, still helping out the team in any way he can, giving the last few tips to Davidovski. Meanwhile, we see with our dedicated camera the pit stop for BF Motorsport, the Italian outfit that made their debut this season in Mugello, taking pole right away and then fighting for the win. That dream falling off at the very last in Mugello, and then finishing second in Slovakia as well. Meanwhile, we briefly saw Chris Issa with the Jamaican flag colors on his race suit. The all Jamaican pair of Summerbell and Issa finally racing together here in Vallelunga as Chris makes his official racing debut in TCR European Endurance and his comeback to racing after being a legend almost 40 years ago. And here is the DSG Cupra, one of the best looking cars in TCR European Endurance and, in fact, in the entire TCR scene around the world. Senna Summerbell helping his teammate getting strapped in for the very first time, giving him last couple of checks and tips before, of course, releasing him into the last 21 minutes of racing here in TCR European Endurance for stage number 1. Meanwhile, here we see the situation at the top of the standings with Victor Davidovski followed by Salvatore Tavano. And then we see Alessandro Alcidi behind. And it looks like Vimmerwerk Motorsport has gained a bit of time over their rivals. Tavano has been lapping very quickly in a 141.6 in his previous lap. That was as quick, if not quicker, than Nestor Girolami, at least in the last couple of laps that he had done prior to his pit stop. That means, of course, that Tavano is catching and he will be, in fact, trying to gain as much time as he possibly can in order to make this race very interesting. Let's not forget that, of course, we will be summing up the times of stage number 1 together with stage number 2 in order to get the final results, but that will only happen after stage number 2 takes place, and that will be in some hours at 2:15 p.m. local time precisely. Here we see Tavano trying to make inroads. Vimmerwerk Motorsport has been very competitive this year in TCR European Endurance, potentially being one of the quickest cars, but some reliability issues have prevented Tavano and Scalvini from so far fighting for the title, though the season is still very long. And a great result here could potentially put them in contention for the driver's title. And then, of course, Vimmerwerk is so far leading in the team standings too, of course, with 2 great entries, such as their main car, number 6, fighting for the overall standings. And then the DSG entry of Senna Summerbell leading in its class, but of course able to take the overall victory in Slovakia as well, where the team was so close to a 1-2, if not for issues experienced by this car right here, who is now into second position. Tavano 6.5 seconds behind Viktor Davidovski, but the gap is potentially destined to come down as he has gained 0.6 in the second sector, where the Cupra seems to be very quick. And now let's see on the start-finish line what the lap times are looking like. Viktor Davidovski has set a 142.6 in the previous lap. Tavano now with a 141.4. That is 1.2 seconds quicker for the driver in second place compared to the one leading. And therefore, could we have a potential fight between the top 2? Meanwhile, here is Davidovski having to lap a couple of drivers. That is Umut Göktaş and then Chris Issa, the 2 of them fighting after the Jamaican entry had a bit of a rough pit stop. But let's go to the pit lane with Alicia Cecchi and Nestor Girolami.
We're here in the pit lane with Nestor Girolami, currently race leader. First of all, you did an amazing start. How was it?
I think it was good. We create a gap of 12 or 13 seconds, which allow now Victor to have some tranquility, but let's see, because the difference is getting slower, and yeah, in endurance race you never know. So, I was managing the tires, trying to push but not pushing too much. Now we will see at the end of the race, but the car feels very good.
You're a new face to this championship, but you know TCR very well. How are you bringing your experience into the championship?
Yeah, the championship is really nice. I mean, this experience on endurance I never experienced before, and I really like it. The idea of sharing the car, trying to make a strategy. Everything went well in the driver change. The team did an amazing job. I think from our side everything is done. Now the result will be between Victor and Tavano.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and hope we can finish the race on the top.
Back to you.
Thank you so much to Alicia Cecchi, our pit reporter, and Nestor Girolami. But meanwhile, we have a car stopped, and that is Davide Rosini, who was able to get back into the racetrack, but unfortunately not for long. We had seen car number 38 try to get back out on track after stopping in the very first couple of minutes of racing, but unfortunately, it looks like the Volkswagen Golf has been left stranded once again out on circuit. That is a shame for Touring Motorsport, who were almost able to take the car back out on track. Unfortunately for them, that's not the case, but we're back to the pit lane once more, this time with Senna Summerbell.
We are back in the pit lane with Senna Summerbell from Vallelunga Motorsport. Senna, we saw you were battling hard before coming in the pit lane. How was the fight?
The fight was excellent. Got a very bad start. I've been very conservative this race. My teammate, Uncle Chris Issa, is driving. I wanted to give him an opportunity, so very careful at the start. Lost basically all my positions, but fought very hard to get them back by the end of my stint to be first in DSG. And now Chris is in the car, and we're hoping he can keep it up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Senna Summerbell from Vallelunga Motorsport, of course, the DSG championship leader, and now head with teammate Chris Issa, currently in 7th position. Issa being overtaken by the other driver who's making their debut, Umut Göktaş. Fortunately here, Davide Rosini unable to get back out on the circuit with his Volkswagen Golf DSG after it stopped on the racetrack a couple of minutes ago, after, of course, the early issues that they experienced today. It's not been an easy start for them, but they will have one more chance to at least bring home some very valuable points for the DSG standings and the team's championships too. And that will be in stage number 2, starting at 2:15 p.m. local time. Meanwhile, let's see what the situation is up top, because we can see that Salvatore Tavano is as close as ever to Viktor Davidovsky. And that is naturally a moment that we have to see careful tension. Salvatore Tavano mounting up a great challenge now, just 1.6 seconds behind Davidovsky, and he looks to be much quicker than his North Macedonian rival. Tavano using the experience that he has as a multiple TCR Italy champion to close down the gap. He is so far the quickest driver in the second half of the race. The only one under the 1 minute 42s right now. 1:41.8 for him, and 1:43 flat for Davidovsky. Meanwhile, Alessandro Cidi is still in third, but is now 18 seconds behind Tavano. So, just 12 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. Then we will be into our final lap of racing with Viktor Davidovsky, with the BRC racing team Hyundai, trying to defend from pole sitter Salvatore Tavano in the Cupra. But speaking of Salvatore Tavano, we're in the pit lane with Alice Cecchi and Alex Calvini.
We are again in the pit lane, joined by Eris Calvini. You did, first of all, pole position, your first pole position in the championship. How was it?
It was great for sure. First time in the first row. We worked a lot to have this, so finally we found it, and I had a good first stint. Now we are battle for the first position. So it remained 10 minutes at the end of the race, and we continue the battle to find the victory.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Back to you.
Well, we've seen the hard work from Eric Scalvini throughout these first minutes of racing. We've seen it in the first stint here in stage number 1. And now Salvatore Tavano has done a tremendous job so far to put himself in a position to attack Viktor Davidovsky. We've seen him now have a look to the outside of turn number 7, and that is Campagnano, the very long hairpin that brings the drivers into the heart of the Vallelunga racetrack, dedicated to his designer, Piero Taruffi. But meanwhile, let's see if Tavano is able to make a move. He is now trying to do so into turn number 11. Up the inside goes Salvatore Tavano, and that is a pretty easy overtake for Vimevec Motorsport as the German team takes P1 back from the hands of BRC Racing Team. The latter now slotting back into second, but that was clinical and precise from Salvatore Tavano, who was able to take first place away from Viktor Davidovsky, and that was an overtake that looked to be bound to happen at one point, with, of course, Tavano being much quicker than Davidovsky. Though, of course, it will be extremely important for, well, both cars to push as hard as they can, because on one hand, Tavano will be looking to extend his lead, try and make it as big as possible before stage number 2. And then on the other hand, of course, it will be Davidovsky's time to shine. But now let's go back to the pit lane.
We're here with Yuri Brigliadori. You did a great start, an excellent job. You gained a lot of position after starting from the back. How was it?
Yeah, to be honest, yesterday was not our day. Today we start from the back. I did a good start, but to be honest, today I missed some speed compared to the Cupra and to the Hyundai. I don't know what to say. Let's see how it will end and come back stronger for stage 2.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you so much, Alice. That was championship leader Yuri Brigliadori. Bit defeated, it looked like, but of course, we've seen how BF Motorsport so far this weekend did not have the smooth sailing weekend that they were hoping to have. Now down into third position, but crucially with a big gap over fourth, and that is Ibrahim Okiai in the Gen 1 Texaco TMS car. Their teammates here now chased by the cameras. That is Umut Göktaş in his first ever outing. He is up into 6th with the DSG entry, and crucially in second position in the DSG standings, behind Emilio Damante, who's doing a terrific job so far with his Audi from Tudor Motorsport, holding down the lead of its class. Now we've seen Alessandro Lacidi in the BF Motorsport Audi. Here he is, looking to extend his gap from third to fourth, but at the same time trying to at least close down the gap to second, which is now 20.5 seconds compared to Viktor Davidovsky, though the two have been lapping pretty evenly so far. The difference was made by Nestor Girolami in the first half of this opening stage. of round number 3 of TCR European Endurance here in Vallelunga. Second stage happening later today at 2:15 p.m. local time here in Italy. Country that will also host the final round of the season in Mugello from the 13th to the 15th of November at the racetrack dedicated to the late Marco Simoncelli. Here is Alcidi, who is looking to at least close down the gap on Davidovski. And the North Macedonian, though, of course, he is in his first race weekend for TCR European Endurance, trying to get a hold of this new format, which, let's not forget, will be the one used by the TCR World Ranking Final, especially here in Vallelunga. That will be the venue of the final event of the season for the World Tour, with the finals. Meanwhile, in front, Salvatore Tavano has extended his lead over Davidovski to 3.5 seconds, lapping a second a lap quicker than his rival in car number 10. Same can be said for Emilio Davante, who is much quicker than his rivals in the DSG standings, with the quality between the speed of the two drivers aboard car number 8 shining this weekend. Both Macari and Damante have made huge strides forwards compared to the opening 2 rounds of the season. Here is Salvatore Tavano, our race leader so far. He's looking to complete the very first stage while holding the lead, which would guarantee him a P1 start for stage number 2. That is exactly what happened in Mugello earlier this year in the first round of the season. Fortunately, then they had suffered a technical failure with just less than 15 minutes left on the clock for stage number 2, thus preventing them from getting the win. They will be looking to change that real quick this weekend, as Tavano now has a 4.2 second lead. It's going to be very important to note down the gaps between the different cars in order to then have the combined standings during stage number 2 as well, at least knowing what needs to be done from each driver. Speaking of what needs to be done, here is the replay of the overtake that we saw earlier today. That was Salvatore Tavano taking the inside of Victor Davidovski into turn 11. That was arguably the most crucial move of the season so far for car number 6. They needed to build a bit of a gap over BRC Racing Team, especially given that tomorrow it's going to be a thing of reversing the roles, as the drivers who are bound to finish stage number 1 are then supposed to start stage number 2 later today. And so Salvatore Tavano will be the one taking the stage start at 2:15 p.m. local time. Whereas Eric Scalvini will be the one finishing things off. And so we are likely going to see Nestor Girolami trying to chase down Eric Scalvini if things, of course, stay like this in the final few minutes of stage number 2, though that will be seen later today. So don't go anywhere after we are done with stage number 1, because in a few hours the action will resume from Vallelunga. We now only have 3 minutes left in stage number 1, with Salvatore Tavano still extending his gap by at least 0.8 of a second each lap. That was the gap between the two of them last time out. Now the gap overall is 5.1 seconds. Meanwhile, here is the DSG leading car of Emilio Damante and Edoardo Macari, the former now in the car, the latter able to do a great job in the first 30 minutes of racing or so. now being chased by Ivano and Davidovski. But of course, being lapped by the leading pair will not be a huge issue for Damante, whose objective is, of course, to maintain his DSG lead. And he has around 50 seconds on Umut Göktaş in second position. And that is a huge margin to be then maintained in stage number 2 to guarantee Damante and to the Motorsports first DSG victory and first class victory for the team in TCR European. Now starting what could be one of the very final laps of this stage number 1 with Salvatore Tavano and Victor Davidovski still in first and second position. Now the gap is 5.9 seconds, with Davidovski trying to do best job he can. Now just 6 tenths between the two in the previous lap. With Alessandro Alcidi in third position. The gap between Alcidi and Davidovski is 21.8 seconds. It's going to be quite a tough challenge for BF Motorsport to take their first win of the season with two powerhouses such as Wimmerwerk Motorsport and BRC Racing Team in the form that we've seen them this weekend. But that remains to be seen in stage number 2. Meanwhile, Tavano was able to lap Emilio Damante without too many issues. That was great from the Audi driver to give way to the Cupra, who's currently leading things with just 20 seconds left on the clock. Going to be very close to be on time to do another lap, as now we are looking to round out the final corner of the circuit as the clock strikes 0 right about now. Salvatore Tavano will be taking the checkered flag and therefore be stage leaders and race leaders from Vallelunga. They take home P1 in the opening stage of this weekend, and that is a phenomenal job for car number 6 with Salvatore Tavano and Eric Scalvini in first position, just ahead of BRC Racing Team with Victor Davidovski and Nestor Girolami, the gap being 6.6 seconds between the two of them. Third place for Alessandro Alcidi, with BF Motorsport still able to take home third place, ahead of Ibrahim Okiai with the Gen 1 lead for Texaco Team AMS. That was a phenomenal performance from them as they take the checkered flag now to be class leaders after the opening stage, with Emilio Damante leading in the DSG standings ahead of Umut Göktaş and Chris Issa. And these are the highlights of this opening stage, where we can see how quick Salvatore Tavano and Eric Scalvini were, especially being able to overtake the BRC Racing Team with Nestor Girolami and Victor Davidovski. But that is everything for stage number 1 here in Vallelunga for round 3 of the season for TCR European Endurance. We will see you guys in a few hours at 2:15 p.m. local time precisely for stage number 2 starting here in Vallelunga. Thanks for being with us and see you guys in a bit.